All right, so we have this wild story about Elon Musk that feels like an episode of Jerry Springer, but it involves the richest man in the world and a gold digger e-girl he knocked up because his breeding fetish is out of control. And now the girl's pissed at him because he's not giving her enough attention and he ghosted her on Valentine's Day. So they started trying to expose each other on Twitter. That's what's going on here. It's hilarious. So this all started when this right-wing Twitter influencer, grifter, Ashley St. Clair, announced she had a kid with Elon around 5 months ago, which apparently quite a few people already knew about because I think she's probably bragging about it in private. So there are rumors of it, even though Elon wanted to keep it a secret. But also some people knew just based on her being promoted a lot on Twitter and Elon responding to her tweets all the time. And one time he even made a joke to her about how he doesn't like to pull out. I swear this guy is just unbelievable. Ashley posted a headline to an article that said, Wagner chief says his forces will pull back. And Elon responded to her and said, the pull-out method. And then he responded again an hour later and said, speaking personally, I prefer the pull-in method. So basically Elon publicly is like, hey, I'll give you a kid if you want. And then a couple months later, she announced she was off birth control. And then the next month, she was pregnant. So for an e-girl grifter, she basically hit the lottery. But she had been planning this for years, apparently. Like in 2020, she said, I need to get Elon Musk's attention for a marriage proposal. And someone responded and said, he's got a kid with a woman already, seems unlikely to work out. And then she said, well, actually, he has 7 already, and he goes through women pretty fast, which is crazy. You know, she's basically like, I got a chance. He has a lot of kids, and he's always dating somebody new. And she was right, and somehow she made it happen. Like, not the marriage, but she at least got pregnant, which she still secured the bag. You know, she's still going to be set for life from this. But apparently it's not enough for her because now she's upset that Elon won't give her enough attention, you know, because this is like his 13th kid with 4 different women. And that's what we know of. You know, he's hiding this one, so I'd imagine he has way more than 13. So obviously he's not going to be spending that much time with Ashley. You know, Elon's busy tweeting all day, playing video games, doing ketamine, and dealing with all his other kids and baby mamas and all that legal shit. I mean, if he wasn't rich, everybody would be like, all right, this guy's the biggest loser of all time. Like, the only reason this can pass and people will defend it is because he can financially provide for the kids. But I guess for Ashley, that's not enough. You know, she was expecting more from him. So she started to get pissed because he wasn't responding to her and he ghosted her on Valentine's Day. You know, she's probably expecting him to take her out to eat or something. But instead, he's with his current girlfriend who he has multiple kids with, and he's at the White House with her. So she put out this message where she said, 5 months ago, I welcomed a new baby into the world. Elon Musk is the father. I have not previously disclosed this to protect our child's privacy and safety, but in recent days, it has become clear that the tabloid media intends to do so, regardless of the harm it'll cause. I intend to allow our child to grow in a normal and safe environment. For that reason, I ask that the media honor our child's privacy and refrain from invasive reporting. So she basically claims here that she needs to tell the world that she has a kid with Elon because the media was planning on doing it and it's going to cause harm to the child, so she decided to instead. But I think anybody with more than half a brain cell could put the pieces together here and be like, let's see, it's Valentine's Day. This girl's sitting at home taking care of her and Elon's baby, and he's out with his current girlfriend at the White House. So, of course, she's going to be pissed about it and jealous. You know, I think most people could figure that out, except for some of these prominent Christian conservative influencers that just turned into absolute simps. It's crazy. They all bought her bullshit and are like, oh, I'm so sorry the media is doing this to you, and congratulations, this is amazing, and all that crap, which is just hilarious. I mean, this is basically a gold digger announcing she hit the lottery. And the reason she's exposing this, and in her words, potentially harming the kid, is because she wants attention. But some really popular right-wing influencers in the comments completely bought this girl's bullshit. Like Candace Owens, she said, children should always be off limits. Journalists are parasites. Hard to imagine what you're going through with this young one. Better to come out with this on your own terms. George and I will be praying for you. And then also Elijah Schaefer, he said, may the dishonest media get effed and stop harassing you. Terribly you have to deal with this. Hoping you can raise this baby away from nasty journalists. And Mike Cernovich, he said, sorry you had to deal with this bullshit. There's no low they won't go. And Ashley responded and said, doxing a baby is pretty bottom of the barrel. So she's acting like the media was planning on releasing her baby's address and like his full name and everything. And even if that's the case, which it's obviously not, why would this stop them? You know, why would her coming out with this stop them at all? And then also, if she's so nervous about this, I don't know why she would invite the media into her home to do a sit-down interview and photo shoot with her. It's just insane. Right after she announced that she had this kid and she wants the media to not report on it and she wants to keep it all private, she has the New York Post come to this $15,000 a month apartment that Elon's paying for to do an interview with her, where she obviously talked about the baby and Elon and everything. So she must love the attention she's getting from this. And she clearly was starting to get annoyed with Elon and the fact that she had to keep this a secret, and she probably wanted him to be more involved. Like she said, I was completely isolated during my pregnancy. Every part of my career and everything I used to do, I couldn't do anymore. I was told not to tell anybody. And she also said Elon declined to put his name on the birth certificate. And she said, I cannot explain the kind of primary pain you feel as a mother, and you're talking to people and they ask you about the one kid and you have to lie and carry this burden in secret. You have to lie to people you love. So she makes it pretty clear that this is probably the reason why she announced she had a kid with Elon, not because the mainstream media was about to come out with it, but because she wants to get attention and she wants to tell the world that she had Elon's kid. So those comments I read earlier have aged so badly. I mean, I don't know how they couldn't see that this is what she's doing. It was pretty obvious. Like even pretty much all their fans knew it. Almost every comment on their comments is like, wait, why are you celebrating this? Like what the hell's going on here? This girl's just an attention-seeking gold digger who obviously doesn't care that much about the privacy of her kid if she's announcing this and using her kid to try to get attention. And it's so funny, that guy Elijah Schaefer, he's been trying to cope over defending her because he got a lot of backlash from it. So he's like, listen, I know she's a typical feminist vulture, but at least she didn't abort her kid. Like that's his takeaway here. He thinks it's brave that a money-hungry feminist had a kid with the richest man alive and now has a $15,000 a month apartment and is pretty much set for life. I mean, does he not understand that this kid's her golden ticket? Like why would she have an abortion? So these people didn't know how to respond to this whole debacle. And I definitely didn't think Elon was going to. I figured he would just let this blow over. Like obviously he didn't want this info out there. This is just embarrassing for him, but I guess it seems like he must have been upset that she leaked it. So he decided to comment on that tweet that I read in the beginning, on that tweet from back in 2020, where she said she wanted to marry him. Milo Yiannopoulos, he reposted that when all this info came out, and Elon commented on it and said, whoa. So now he's publicly trying to embarrass her, because obviously this tweet makes it look like she's a stalker or something, and Elon's just finding out about it. So it's crazy. He's pretty much taking a shot at the mother of his kid. And then she actually responded, which just made things so much worse, and she deleted it right away because she probably realized that, and she probably got a call from Elon's lawyer, and they're like, hey, if you want to keep that apartment, you better shut the hell up. So she said, Elon, we've been trying to communicate with you for the past several days, and you have not responded. Which her saying something like this, again, just supports the theory even more that she made this announcement because Elon was ghosting her. Like she's making it so obvious now. So she continued on and said, when are you going to reply to us instead of publicly responding to smears from an individual who just posted photos of me in my underwear at 15 years old? So this is just completely out of control. I mean, apparently also Milo was posting pictures of her, like underage pictures or something, and he was suspended from Twitter for a week. But still, Elon decided to respond to his tweet. And Ashley also claims that Elon knew about this tweet already and him and his team discussed it last month. And she said that Elon was just asking her to have more kids the last week, which if that's true, this dude needs to chill out. I mean, this is just insane. Like, how could anybody support this? And Ashley also said, I'd like to take this offline for our child's sake, which of course now she's saying this. She's the one that made this public. She brought it online. She did an interview with the New York Post. And now once she starts getting shit, she's like, all right, let's take this offline. This is going too far. So this is just the trashiest shit ever. But I guess a bunch of conservatives are celebrating it for some reason. Like they spend so much time preaching about how important marriage is and traditional family values and two-parent households. But when Elon has his 13th kid that he'll probably barely spend any time with, and when it's out of wedlock and with his 4th different woman, they all act like he's a great parent. It makes no sense. And all these people just happen to conveniently ignore the fact that Elon, he also authorized one of his sons, who was a minor at the time, to start taking puberty blockers. Elon signed off on that. And all these people that would normally call that child abuse if it were anybody else, they all just ignore it and pretend like Elon's a great father and it's great that he's trying to repopulate Earth. So Elon has these people wrapped around his finger. Like the fact that they're celebrating him having a kid he'll never see and leaving this girl to be a single mom is just wild. And it's funny that they're supporting Ashley and defending her, but then Elon basically makes it public that him and Ashley aren't on good terms, and he takes a subtle shot at her, and now all those people who are supporting her are real quiet, because I don't think you'll see them defending her from Elon at all, even though she's pretty much saying that Elon, he's not around that much, he's not really being a good father, but of course these people, they don't really care. So this was such a mess and so embarrassing for everybody involved. I mean, also, I don't know if Elon knew this before he had a kid with Ashley, but she used to go by Sex Laptop on Twitter and allegedly sold nudes to people or did cam modeling or something, and she had some pretty wild tweets. So if he knew about this stuff, that explains why he wanted to keep the kid a secret. This looks really bad for him. I mean, this is almost like him knocking up an OF girl. Like, this girl clearly just slept her way to the top. But let me know what you guys think. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out my Patreon. I've been talking a lot about Elon on there and how Joe Rogan won't stop simping for him. It's like the cringiest shit ever. And there are also over 100 other exclusive videos on there. There's a lot of stuff to go through. So if you enjoyed the channel, make sure you check it out. I post every week. There'll be a link in the description. All right, so recently on Andrew Schultz's podcast, he's been getting very handsy with some of his guests. It's kind of like what he normally does with Akash. He started doing with his guests, but they don't seem as into it. And like with Logan Paul, who was on his podcast last month, Schultz will take things pretty far. This was more than the occasional leg slap. Schultz was full on groping this man. And he's got to be careful because you do this to the wrong person and you could get in some trouble. But I think maybe before this podcast, Andrew and Logan came to a deal where Andrew wouldn't bring up CryptoZoo at all as long as he gets to fondle Logan a bunch of times throughout the podcast. I think that might have been the trade-off they made. No, I'm just kidding. But there was at one point, Schultz's crew was like, all right, Andrew, take it easy. Because he just literally grabbed Logan's thigh and started massaging it. It was so uncomfortable, and I'm sure Logan was annoyed by it, but he's got some patience because he put up with this a lot throughout the podcast. And like I was saying, Schultz has got to be careful because he does this to the wrong person and they feel disrespected or something, he might get hit. Like even his producer, when he saw Schultz start grabbing Logan's leg, he's like, you better not do that to me.
I was engaged. Now I'm engaged.
Yo, you are, dude. I'm fucking engaged. I'm putting the gay in engaged right now. Dude, he got D's, bro.
Wait, did he?
Dude, be serious. Come on, let me squeeze your arms again.
Yeah.
Be serious, bro. Come on.
He can't get nothing. You got pride.
Nah, feel that, though. Feel that.
No. I've been trying to size him up, and I'm like, yo, he's kind of big.
He might got you now?
In us. Andrew.
Come on, bro.
I'm insulting the guest.
Come on, bro.
Serious, dude.
Bro, I had to make sure the legs are also getting worked out. You know what I mean?
He's trying to be serious.
Chill, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
Okay, I'll break your thigh.
He got multiple lists.
Fighting Mike Perry potentially.
Yo, son, that's a harder fight.
No.
Nah, he ain't trying to do that.
That's a harder fight. What the fuck? Bro.
How you think? I'm cooked. It was 10 rounds. It was 10 rounds. We knew.
Take your pants off, son.
Jake was going to win.
Take your pants off, son.
All of you are assaulting me on Bobby Lee.
Yeah, so I'd say Schultz was getting a little too carried away during this podcast. I don't know how Logan was putting up with this, but maybe he did feel like since Schultz was kind of doing him a favor with this podcast, then he just had to deal with it because Andrew is completely out of control. And to do this to a guest on your podcast is wild. I mean, even him and Akash don't take things this far. And, him and Akash are usually on the same page. Like, they're always just grabbing each other and shaking each other's legs and stuff. But when Schultz does this with his guests, it always is pretty uncomfortable. Like, he was also doing this recently with Dave Portnoy as well, and obviously he didn't take it anywhere near as far as he did with Logan, but I think he was still getting on Dave's nerves a little bit because Dave would be in the middle of talking and then Akash and Schultz would just burst out laughing and start hollering and screaming, and Dave doesn't really laugh at anything, so he just kind of sits there, but then Schultz will grab him and start shaking him around, which I don't think he's too thrilled about. And this first clip is something else. Schultz starts doing this deranged laugh, and then he grabs Dave and starts to shake him, and then you can see Akash, I think he's about to do the same thing, and he puts his hand on Dave's leg and then takes it away right away because he probably realizes he doesn't look like he's very comfortable with this, and it's kind of weird, two grown men grabbing another guy's legs and shaking him.
Yeah.
Was
fantastic. Yeah. Shakespeare in Love.
I'm not.
I mean,
what? Move on. I had a great point. You're never gonna hear it. That point's gone.
We can get it out of him, I
Nope.
think.
Yeah.
I think we can tickle it out of him. We can tickle it out.
And also, I think the best part about this podcast is Dave really doesn't laugh at anything, but Schultz and Akash, on the other hand, are just going nuts the whole time. Like, anytime someone says something funny, they have to laugh for at least 5 seconds, and Dave's just sitting there like, what am I dealing with?
Like that, if you have a dating show, that's a little cringy.
What's it called? Everyone wants to suck my dick.
Listen, but
I was going to take
like Leonardo DiCaprio.
I wrote for it.
Yeah, so there you go. Point proven. Like, you know.
Everybody say he's the coolest.
Okay, go.
Crazy viral.
We know.
Do you, little man? The way it fucking happened.
Get him the ecstasy. Get him the ecstasy right now. Get him on it.
The concert,
Oh yeah, and another thing, Schultz, who's 40 years old, just started getting into ecstasy, and now he's obsessed with it, and he has to talk about it basically on every podcast. Like, he's the first person to realize that drugs can be fun.
He's got an ecstasy addiction. Who cares? Like regulating moods.
Yeah, no shit.
Have you done some ecstasy?
Yes,
Wait a minute.
dude.
Talk to me. Wait. When?
Molly.
No, ecstasy.
I mean, there's no difference.
No, there is a
a
fucking
huge
huge difference.
Yeah.
You need to feel amazing and full and wanting to share, but fucking A, does music sound good on it? And we should do it now.
Okay.
We should do it
Hold
now.
on, hang on. Yeah. Whoa, hang on.
We should do it.
But you.
Yeah, so now he wants to do ecstasy with everybody, which I'm sure is just making the touching problem even worse. Like, at the end of the Dave Portnoy episode, he's like, man, Dave, I wish you came to the club the other night. We had ecstasy. We could have had a great time.
Right. We got the table
I
ready.
need my seat.
You know, we had the ecstasy on deck too. We could have had a great night, bro.
I knew you were on something.
And that was honestly probably the most Dave laughed the entire podcast. And it's funny, some of the top comments were talking about Schultz's epiphanies. Like, this person says they laugh harder at that than they do at his jokes. And this other comment said somebody needs to timestamp all the epiphanies. And I'm sure there were a bunch this episode, but that kind of took a back seat to the crazy laughing and all the touching. That was definitely the most obnoxious part. But let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments. And then make sure you go check out my Patreon account. There's a ton of exclusive content on there. There's probably over 40 videos at this point, and I'm going to be posting another one tomorrow about Brendan Schaub with the whole Legion of Skanks thing, and also an update on the podcast network that he signed to. And then also I'm going to be talking about Tom Segura. There's some stuff with him, and there's a ton of other videos on there, so make sure you go check it out. I'll put a link in the description, and then make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video. Alright, so Ari Shaffir was just on Bert Kreischer's podcast for the first time since dosing him. And these two have done podcasts together since then. They've done Rogan's, but it's the first time he's been back on Bertcast since the episode where he drugged him. So most of the comments are talking about how they should finally release that episode, which hopefully Bert does, you know, because that'd be pretty funny to see. Even this podcast was pretty entertaining, because there are a couple times where Bert would be talking about basically everything wrong with podcasting and comedy by talking about himself, but as at least kind of in a self-aware way for once. And it was funny because Ari would use it as an example of what he basically hates in comedy, and he'd sound disgusted by it, but not like he's trying to insult Bert, you know, more just he's giving his natural reaction and he's gonna tell Bert like it is. I mean, at one point, Bert was talking about how earlier that morning he was thinking about filming a workout video to upload to Instagram, but then he started thinking about it and is like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm not a fitness influencer. And Ari's basically like, well, you're just desperate for content and likes. And it sounds like Bert kind of agrees. And then he also goes on to talk about how one of his friends passed away recently, and his first thought was to post on social media about it. But then again, he's like, what am I doing? Like, why would I do that? And then Ari just starts ranting about how comedians post way too much personal stuff to social media. And by the end of it, he just sounds fed up. And he's like, there's a sickness in our field.
This morning, I was in the gym and I'd partied last night, and I was going to do a video of me, hey, and then I was like, what am I doing? Like, what? I'm not a fitness
There's nothing
influencer.
in here.
There was a time.
You're just sick for content and likes. It's just like, I may as well do something.
Well, that's the whole, when we get back to that whole performative thing, my buddy just passed away. And I was like, oh, I should post it. What am I posting?
Why are you posting?
Why am I
I heard that
posting?
guy. My thoughts go out to his family. Like, that's not,
Yeah.
Why do you got to go public with that? You see people like posting their ring and they're getting engaged. I'm like, why are you including strangers in this deeply personal moment? There's a sickness. There's a sickness in our field.
And you can tell Ari's disgusted by a lot of the stuff going on in comedy, which is obviously ironic coming from him. I mean, I wish this was somebody else saying this, but Ari Shaffir is actually making some good points. Again, this is actually the second video I've made in, I think, a week where Ari's made some sense. I mean, also during this podcast, Ari kind of takes some indirect shots at Tom Segura. And again, I'm sure he's thinking of a bunch of different comedians, but Tom definitely fits the description here. Like Bert brings up how in rap music, it's cool to talk about how much money you have and the cars you have, but in comedy, it's like the opposite. And he asks Ari why that is. And Ari explains it to him and then talks about how disgusted he is when comedians do that.
Jay-Z has a lyric, what's 50 grand to a motherfucker like me? Can you please remind me? It's such a badass lyric. But then you go, that's so disconnecting. Why is it popular? Why does
they're based in braggadociousness, and comedy's not supposed to. So when they're like, I fly private jets, I fly my Maserati, look at my Lamborghini, it's like it goes with this like bravado thing. And with us, it's not supposed to be there. So it's disconcerting, and it's a bit gross. We're supposed to be self-deprecating. And then everyone's coming out like, you know, like doing these big things and like private jets. And you and Joe Coy made the joke of like, well, now the joke is I'm actually bragging. And then everyone else just caught up and actually just really bragged. And then there is no joke. It's just bragging. And it's just gross for what we do.
Yeah, and that's definitely what happened to Tom. You know, at first he was trying to act like he was doing it just as a bit, but then after a while, it just turned into actual bragging and just talking about that stuff way too much, which, like Ari said, just doesn't work in comedy. But another example of an industry where you can do that stuff and you kind of have to do it, and something I thought Tom was maybe kind of trying to get into, is the whole motivational alpha male red pill content. Like with that, you need to be showing off your cars and money. Like if Andrew Tate didn't have money, he would never have been anywhere close to how famous he is now. So that's why I think for a little, it seemed like Tom was heading in that direction, you know, telling his fans that they're losers, that they need to get their shit together and they need to stop being so bitter and jealous. You know, Andrew Tate was already doing the same thing and would call people brokies, and Tom would call his fans pores. Also, Tom was one of the first people to have on Andrew Tate before he even blew up, and it seemed like Tom loved that podcast, so I'm sure he was inspired a little bit by him and thought he could pull that off. The difference is, though, Andrew Tate gained his fame by being arrogant and self-obsessed and showing off his lifestyle, but Tom, on the other hand, it's like the opposite. You know, he gained his fame being a self-deprecating comedian. So him getting mad at the pores and trying to act like he's better than them just doesn't work. And it's way too serious. You know, he was never very funny trying to do that stuff. Like at least Andrew Tate, some of his stuff was kind of funny, but Tom, he just couldn't pull it off. And I think he realizes that now. You know, he's definitely cut back on it. And it's funny because I know Ari just started a new podcast under YMH Studios, so I don't think he's really trying to take a shot at Tom when he's talking about this, but he kind of did. And I'd imagine Bert was probably thinking of Tom when he brought this subject up. So also during this podcast, you know, there's some classic Bert moments, like where he would ask a question just because, you know, he wanted to answer it himself and try to turn it into a therapy session.
Why did you get back into podcast?
I found something I wanted to work on. Found something I wanted to do.
Tell me about when it got exhausting to you. Because I'm going to tell you what I'm going through, and I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
I had a few moments in life where I didn't know. I felt everything was performative. Everything was performative. Yeah. The other day at the 5K, a girl blew out her knee,
and you were like, "Turn the cameras on. Let's help her."
But I went to sit with her to hold her hand, and I had a voice in my head go, "I wonder if anyone's filming this," and I went, "What the fuck?
What's wrong with me?
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Like, where's my head at?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want that anymore. Like, I really don't want it.
And I think Bert is trying to say he doesn't want to be the center of attention for once in his life, which is hard to believe. You know, he's saying that, but I doubt it. Even though he is in a weird position where pretty much everything he does is recorded and he's going like 24/7, which he chooses to do, but obviously you're going to get burnt out doing that. I mean, Ari said that's kind of one of the reasons why he stopped doing podcasts for a while, because he just needed a break from being recorded.
That was one of the things I wanted when I stopped Skeptic Tank. I was like, I haven't been not recorded for a full week in a long time.
And Bert might be exaggerating here, but he admits that about 90% of the conversations he's had with Joe Rogan have been on podcasts, which is pretty crazy. And again, this is something that Ari just sounds disgusted by.
Tom and I
you guys are celebrities now. There's a good chance somebody's videotaping you wherever you go.
Thinking the other day, I was like, I called Joe. I've talked to Joe if you crammed all the hours I've spent talking to Joe.
Yeah.
90% of them were recorded.
Damn.
I remember one time I was on the phone with him, we were talking something, and he goes, "You know what? Stop. Let's just come over. We'll do a podcast. This is a good conversation."
Ugh.
And I
Yeah,
was
we can like commodify this conversation.
Yeah, Rogan was probably thinking, if I'm stuck talking to Bert Kreischer, I better be getting paid for it. No, but I mean, it's crazy that these two are good friends, but the vast majority of their conversations have been on a podcast. Because as much as Rogan acts like it's just a genuine conversation they're having, obviously, if you're on a podcast, it's not going to be completely authentic. Like, people are going to act different if they know they're being recorded. And I bet a lot of comedians' relationships are like this. You know, they only really interact on podcasts. I mean, Bert and Tom, for example, he says their whole relationship now is just on air. Like, that's the only time they really talk to each other. And if they talk off air, it's just about business. And Bert's been complaining about this for a while now, how Tom never hangs out with him off air. But I guarantee even if they were to do that, Bert would still be trying to take pictures or videos to upload to Instagram. And I remember one of the times he asked Tom to hang out, he wanted him to meet him at a college football game, which obviously Bert is just going to be partying the whole time and trying to be the center of attention, and everybody's going to be hanging around him. So I don't know if that's the best time for them to hang out. You know, it'd probably be like when they went to Vegas. You know, the whole time him and Tom are promoting Por Osos, like going on shows, taking pictures and videos, crashing shows. You know, it's just turning into a whole like media tour. It can never just be them chilling, taking it easy, just enjoying life. Like, there always has to be a business aspect to it. And Bert always has to be the center of attention. You know, him walking around Vegas, obviously people are going to be running up to him. He's going to be pounding beer with people. He's going to be partying. There's no way you can really hang out with him in that environment.
That's what it is, I guess.
Me and Tom's relationship is entirely recorded.
Yeah.
Our friendship is always like, we
Don't
go
you find
in,
that odd?
just recently started finding it odd. Like, I
Did you miss
realized,
to find out who you are?
you know, when we started the company, we started talking more about the business stuff. And then I realized we haven't really hung.
Yeah.
And
So I wrote you guys the other day. You didn't text me back. If
he-
we're just going on a hike or
no, if we can be
lunch?
very honest, Tom gets exhausted very easily.
I know,
he gets
that's why we
burned.
should go
Yeah.
do a hike.
And yeah,
So I wonder if Bert will actually cut down on doing podcasts at all, you know, because he complains about all this stuff and he's like, oh, it's getting to be too much. It's exhausting. But he's the one that chooses to go on every podcast out there and do like 3 podcasts a week of his own and upload all these videos and promo for his tours and stuff. And I mean, he's complaining about all this on a podcast. So, I mean, I don't know if he could ever really give it up. But let me know what you guys think. And then make sure to check out my Patreon account if you want to hear about the time Tim Dillon humbled Whitney Cummings, or the degeneracy of Ari Shaffir, or how David Lucas is trying too hard to be an edgy comedian and it's starting to backfire a little bit. And there's just a ton of other stuff. There are over 80 videos and most of them are over 20 minutes. So if you're interested, I'll put a link in the description.
I can also tell you, and this might sound crazy, but based on our investigations and stuff that we've seen, okay, there is definitely something that I think would rival what we know currently with physics, and a tech that potentially is out there that we don't have the ability to reproduce, because it would basically be like dropping a cell phone right off back during the time of maybe caveman. So like, we just don't have the tech to develop it yet.
When you say that it operates outside our understanding of physics, what specifically are you saying? Like, what happened?
To I guess break it down in simple terms is that I think that some of the tech that exists, that whatever these things have, these energy things have.
Energy things? What do you mean?
Well, they call them interdimensional beings. I think that they can actually operate through the time spaces that we currently have.
All right, so now to try to get people to move on from the Epstein files, the government is trying to distract us with conversations about aliens. You know, now all of a sudden people are all focused on interdimensional beings and UFOs, which a lot of people predicted was going to happen after the Epstein files fall out. And last week it was reported that some top officials had a meeting to discuss what to do about it. And apparently Rogan's podcast was brought up. And then just the other day, exactly a week later, we have some hot chick on there talking about aliens. So they're getting creative here. They definitely know Rogan's audience well. I mean, hot chicks and aliens, you can't beat that. So Rogan had on this Congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna, to talk about interdimensional beings and UFOs, which obviously wasn't compelling at all. She just sounded confused most of the time, but people weren't complaining. And luckily, Rogan's bullshit detector wasn't working very well either, even though there were a few times where it seemed like he was thinking come on, what are we doing here? But she's hot, that goes a long way. Like, most of the comments were just about that. People are like, as long as my psyops are sexy, I'm good. And hot women tell me UFOs are real. This is my dream. So I guess this podcast wasn't a terrible idea. I mean, it sounds like there's a big market for this. I mean, she wasn't convincing at all, and still people loved it. She's basically just like, I'm in the government. I've seen proof of UFOs and interdimensional beings, but I can't go into any detail or explain it at all. And people are saying this podcast broke the internet. It's hilarious. Of course, she also claims they're going to release some information and be completely transparent about it, but that sounds kind of familiar. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, she's also in charge of this task force that's supposed to push for declassification of federal secrets. And a big thing they're working on is trying to get the Epstein files released, which of course we know how that's going. So I don't have much faith in her. And of course, conveniently, Joe forgot to bring up the Epstein files during this podcast. He didn't mention it once. It's crazy. And she did mention it once, but just to say that she's not using aliens to distract from it. And then she also said that Kash Patel has been extremely transparent. They always use that word. So this podcast was just comical. Joe had on a congresswoman who's in charge of a task force that's trying to release the Epstein files and didn't ask her about that once. And I'm sure Joe was told not to bring it up because if he did, this would have been a complete disaster. I mean, she was already barely keeping it together with the alien stuff. Joe was probably thinking, man, this girl's lucky she's hot. I don't think he's buying any of this.
When you say interdimensional beings, that they know that these are interdimensional beings, how do they know that?
Based on testimony, would be based on witnesses that have come forward. But what I can tell you is,
so the witnesses just were told that they were interdimensional?
that they've seen things. And what I can tell you without getting into classified conversations is that there have been incidences that I believe where very credible people have reported that there have been movement outside of time and space.
That's very vague.
Yeah. So, look.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Look. Have I seen a portal open? No. Have I seen a spaceship? Personally, no. Have I seen evidence of this? Yes. Have I seen photo documentation of aircraft that I believe were not made by mankind? Yes. Is there historical significance to this? Yes. Is there multiple events that go back to, I would argue, maybe even before the time of Christ that have documented this in text? Yes. So do I believe that the government has access to certain technology? Yes, to an extent. And I believe that certain contractors potentially have back engineered this tech. But look, I think a lot of people say, well, this is a distraction from everything else happening in the country right now. And all I'm simply trying to say is it's not a distraction. The people that are kind of helping to divulge all this information, you have an intelligence community, Tulsi Gabbard, Radcliffe, Kash Patel. They have been truly, in regards to our other investigations, extremely transparent and wanting to get this information out. But it doesn't mean that within these intelligence communities there isn't pushback. And so part of the reason why the task force was formed pertaining to things like UAP, pertaining to things like the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, pertaining to things like the JFK, MLK, and RFK investigations is because even though we don't hold declassification authority, what we're trying to do is push these agencies and be, if you will, the pit bull and the attack dog on trying to get this information released. And to a lot of these agencies' credits, they've been extremely transparent, and we have.
Yeah, so as long as she says she's being transparent, I trust her. I mean, she had like the same script as Kash Patel on here. She just kept saying, trust me, take my word for it. We're being transparent. Even though she also claims Donald Trump not releasing the Epstein files was a 4D chess move. And like with Kash Patel, she also wrote a children's book about Trump. I mean, these people are so funny. And then she wore a MAGA swimsuit at one point and went viral for that. That's like her claim to fame. And she used to be a swimsuit model and also was a cocktail waitress at a strip club. So she's basically a glorified e-girl now and a UFO expert who's going to release evidence of interdimensional beings. I mean, it's so ridiculous, but honestly, this could actually be a really lucrative grift for her. And it's funny, I think Rogan's good friend Eric Weinstein was really jealous that Rogan would rather talk to her about aliens than him, because he put out a tweet that called this podcast mental sludge and said it was super embarrassing. And he said, I can rip a bunch of equally vapid vibe terms like digital seraphim, vibration travelers, plasmic will, and disembodied guardians. So he is better at coming up with terms, but I can't blame Joe here. I mean, obviously he'd rather talk to a swimsuit model over Eric Weinstein or some other strange UFO guy. So also Ian Carroll, who Rogan had on earlier this year, ratioed Anna's post where she's promoting this podcast and said, so I'm to understand you talked for hours and didn't discuss the Epstein files in your little task force dedicated to publishing them. Because that is crazy. Like, she's always tweeting about Epstein and she's in that task force, but then she's on the biggest podcast in the world and doesn't even talk about it. And Rogan doesn't talk about it either. I mean, it's so funny. Rogan used to bring up Epstein like every other podcast. But now since that whole fiasco happened, he barely talks about it. Like, the only time he really went into it for more than 30 seconds was with that guy from the CIA, which was still kind of bullshit. They didn't really have much to say about it. And I saw Rogan just had on Sam Tripoli, who's a big conspiracy theory guy. He loves talking about Epstein. So I thought for sure he would go into it quite a bit, but they only discussed it for like a minute or two. And of course, they only talked about Pam Bondi being incompetent. They didn't really talk about the cover-up or anything. So it just seems really strange. And now with this podcast, he just made it so obvious that he's trying to help distract from the Epstein files. Like another former Rogan guest, Tom Bilyeu, he criticized this podcast too. He said, am I crazy to assume that this is internally facing propaganda rather than actual interdimensional beings? So it's like hard to ignore at this point. I mean, this girl wasn't convincing at all. Like whenever Rogan questioned her, she had no idea what to say. So she would just resort to saying, I can't talk about that. I can't go into detail. I mean, it's like she wasn't even trying to make a compelling argument. I mean, I believe there's probably aliens out there or something like that, but after hearing this, it made me believe in it less. And if this is the person in charge of exposing what the government knows about it, based on this podcast, I don't think we'll see anything very significant, and I'm sure Rogan knows that, and I'm sure she knows that too. I mean, they're both basically just acting at this point.
Yeah, so what I want to bring it back to evidence. You said that you've seen evidence. Like, what kind of evidence have you seen?
I have seen photos. I have seen...
what have you seen photos of?
So I was in a skiff, and I can't discuss all that was in a skiff, but what I can tell you is based on the photos that I've seen, I'm very confident that there's things out there that have not been created by mankind.
It seems crazy that people have access to information that shows that there's something outside of us that is more intelligent, at least more capable than we are, and they hide it from everybody else.
What I can tell you is that when you have thousands upon thousands of people around the planet throughout time that have reported something,
right?
To say that those people are crazy, to say that, the whole concept of even just asking the question that you might not necessarily be psychologically sound, that in itself, that's a disinformation campaign to get people to shut up about it. And that's a problem. We know that the U.S. government has not exactly been clean, and a lot of what they've done with the American people, specifically to the topic of UFOs.
Which makes you think that it's probably because there's something there.
Representative Gates has gone on record. He actually did as soon as he left office that we've seen stuff that I don't believe was created by mankind.
So you can't tell us what you saw, but
I'm going to let you infer.
See. This is the problem that I have with all this stuff.
I should be able to tell you without losing my clearance.
Well, not just that. That people that have that information should give that information to the general public.
Correct.
And stop treating us like you're smarter than us and that you can handle it and we can't. That's silly.
Which is why we have to declassify.
Yeah, so I don't have much faith in her, but if the Epstein stuff really heats up again, they might have to release something to distract from that. I mean, it probably won't be much. It'll probably just be some breadcrumbs to keep the peasants happy for a week or two. But hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we'll get some actual transparency, but I doubt it. Let me know what you guys think, though. And if you want to hear about how Rogan's podcast is being used by Epstein associates to try to clear their name, or how Rogan freaked out at his comedy club a couple months ago because he thought a woke reporter was trying to infiltrate it, or how Tim Dillon exposed his handler, make sure you check out the Patreon. There'll be a link in the description.